Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM The Fan. I'm joining you here. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. Nathan Marzion, Bucks super fan. He is back and ready to go. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. And I don't know how many of you saw Nathan out and about over the weekend for the NCAA tournament, celebrating a big Marquette victory. And then they stumble and fell against Michigan State. And we're going to talk a little bit Marquette-Wisconsin rivalry towards the end of the podcast. So you want to stay tuned for that. We're not going to not talk about Marquette or Wisconsin. So we'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But first, I want to start off talking about Giannis and whether or not really he should be getting more MVP love for MVP than he's getting at this point, because I'm starting to hear the narrative a little bit more now on sports talk radio, syndicated sports talk radio, right? ESPN, CBS Sports Radio, Fox Sports, whatever the case may be, NBA radio. A couple guys now are starting to bring up the fact of, why is Giannis, from an odd standpoint, third in all of this? Like, why is he so far behind kind of the other two guys when it comes to Joker and Embiid, considering he's on the best team in the NBA, considering the fact that he's played without his right hand and Khris Middleton half the season and still had him in that position when Middleton came back, considering that he himself has been a little dinged up, as has Drew Holiday, and they've had injury issues kind of throughout the year that they've had to play through. And still yet, he's putting up MVP type numbers, I would say. And like we talked about before, he's got the best team in the NBA. So Nathan Marzion, president of the Giannis fan club, I will turn to you. Should Giannis be getting more MVP love than he's getting right now? And I saw you tweeting out some numbers earlier today about such a thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just keep coming back to the fact that, like, if we didn't overthink this, it would be such an obvious choice, because Giannis checks pretty much every box that you normally get from the MVP. Usually, there's only like two of these boxes checked or one of these boxes. Like, it's usually either the player with, by far the best season, or like the that has the best season. It's the player that is the consensus best player in the world, or it's the player that's on the team that gets the number one seed, or the number one record in the whole league. And it's like, or it's guy that does it on both ends or whatever. Like, he gets all of those basically. I mean, you could argue guys are having, like, you could argue maybe Embiid's having a better season, maybe, but like, I don't know, when you take into account both sides, not that Embiid's a bad defender, but like Giannis is better, and Giannis is putting up he's averaging the most points per minute in the NBA. He's top 5 in rebounding. Defensively, he has the lowest field goal percentage against, so he's arguably the best defender. He's he was voted by GMs as like the player they would start their team with if they could start a team today. And his team is 2.5 games ahead of everyone else. What are we really doing here if he's not, let alone to be like have him third? Like, if he's not first, what are we really doing? Because it's like, everyone kind of agrees, okay, he's probably the best player. He's on the best team. He's having a fantastic year on both ends. Again, you can find stats where he's number one in points per minute. He's literally averaging the most points per minute. What he does in 31 minutes a game is insane. So it's not like he's not like he's had a down year offensively. And then defensively, he's, again, as I said, number one in field goal percentage against. If you don't overthink it, it's such an obvious choice. And I said, I was like, if you took Embiid and Giannis and flipped them essentially, and had Embiid had Giannis' stats, Giannis had Embiid's stats, and Embiid was first in the conference and Giannis was third in the conference, Embiid would be the easy, like, everyone would be like Embiid's MVP, because, he's having like Giannis is putting up fantastic stats and he'd be number one in the conference. It'd be like, okay, we're giving it to Embiid. But since Giannis has already won it before, everyone's a little bit tired of Giannis. Not that, not that nobody appreciates his greatness, but, I don't think anyone's trying to go out there and give Giannis more MVP awards. But since Embiid's kind of that guy that hasn't won it yet, it's his turn. Jokic already won 2 in a row. Giannis won the 2 before that. Even though he's third in the conference, probably going to finish third based on how their schedule looks at the end of the year. It's like we're still trying to just give him the MVP. And, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it a little bit. I'm not saying he hasn't had a fantastic year. But, again, when you look at past, like, you cannot find in the last, any recent memory, a time when the best player in the world at the time was on the team with the best record and didn't win MVP. Like, LeBron won 4 out of 5 MVPs in his prime when he was the best player in the world and the Heat were like the best team in the league. He was winning at those MVPs. And then, for a while you could say, okay, LeBron was the consensus best player from 2014 until like 2018, 2019-ish, never won an MVP, but that's because his team never was higher than like third in the standings. His team was always a little bit behind. Like the Cavs were not fantastic in the regular season, and so they'd kind of give it to other guys who had maybe better regular seasons. But this year, it's like Giannis is both. Giannis
you
is
could look
both.
at, you're right. And you could look at Michael Jordan, though. I mean, you could say Jordan should have won MVP for all those years that he won titles and everything else. And that wasn't necessarily happening either. They were giving it out to random dudes along the way. All right. So here's something. I don't know if you had a chance to read the Athletic piece talking about this very topic, about MVP and what is the criteria that these dudes kind of use individually. And there's different writers involved. Sam Amick is one of them. And this guy, Will Guillory, I think it's his name, covers the Pelicans, and he has an MVP vote this year. He had MVP votes, I believe, in 18 and 19 as well. So I'm going to tell you that they asked one question, and then the person writing this article said, as you noted, Sam, the award is known as the most valuable player rather than best player or even player of the year. As voters, do you would see a distinction in those terms? Should we? I'm going to get you to Will Guillory from New Orleans. Yes, I don't think the award should automatically go to the best or most talented player in the NBA. I would say Giannis is the best player in the NBA and Kevin Durant is the most talented, but I wouldn't give either one of those guys my MVP vote this season. There are a ton of factors that come into play. That's why watching the entire season matters. It should be about what you've done this season, not what you're capable of doing or what you've done in the past. So, again, based on that, as far as what he is saying, if you're the best player in the league, that does not mean you win the MVP. Okay. But at the same point, if it's going to be most valuable player to that team, right? So if you take Giannis off the Bucks, how good are you? And we talked about this on Kurt and Long, actually, Ryan Horvath and I in the last podcast, because we got sidetracked into the NBA. And he said, well, if you take Embiid off of Philly, what are they? A 9 or a 10 seed or something like that or whatever. And Ryan argues that if you took Giannis off the Bucks, they would probably still be around a 6 seed or somewhere in that area because their roster is better than Philly. Now, should that play against Giannis at the end of the day because they have a better roster that now works against Giannis? Because we talked about it, like this is a better roster than his championship year for sure. Like this is a more talented roster than when he had before when he won a championship. So I don't know if that's fair or not as far as to penalize Giannis for that.
I always hate that because it's like, I always think they should change the name of the award because I think it sometimes tricks people into like, oh, we should give it to the guy where if you took them off the team, how much of an impact does it have? No, this isn't about like value to your specific team. It's who's the most valuable, who is the player that if every team had a pick, they would take first, or most teams would take first. Who would be the consensus number one pick? And I mean, it would be Giannis. And, you can argue, okay, like there's specific guys on specific teams that might be, if you took them away, they would fall off a cliff more than if you took Giannis away from the Bucks. That doesn't mean Giannis isn't the most valuable player. Like Giannis is still on any team. If you even everything out and every team was at a certain level without a superstar, but you could add any superstar and they would make that team that much better, Giannis would be number one. Like you can't penalize guys for having good teammates. The only time I will use that, the only time the teammate stuff really comes into play for me is like Tatum to me took a little bit of a bump a bump down this year when Jaylen Brown started averaging like 28. And you're like, okay, like you have a guy that's dang near averaging as much as you are. Like, but all these other guys, it's like Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, those are clearly the lead guys. I don't need to be debating, okay, who would, whose team would be worse if you took them off. No, like they're all clearly lead guys. They're all clearly very valuable. I'm not going to sit there and do all that stuff. The only time it comes into play is either, a teammate is like almost outperforming you and you're like, you can make the argument they're not even like the best player on their team right now. Or if, I don't know, like there's just other scenarios maybe where you would bring that up, but I never like doing that. And so I don't know.
Here's another point made by Guillory again on this Athletic piece. He says, let's see, where is it here? I will say that in order for a player to win back-to-back MVPs, or even 3 in a row in the case of the Joker, that player has to raise the bar over what they accomplished the previous season. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to win more games or post significantly better numbers, but I can't justify voting a guy to win 3 years in a row if I think he's basically having the same season he had in previous years. The historical context matters. That's why I take so much pride in being an awards voter, Guillory said. What we do today will impact how people view the league 20 years from now. Being able to capture that historical context should matter in how we vote. Voting a guy to win in consecutive years should send the message to people looking back in history that not only was he incredible, but he kept getting better as he sat above all his peers. And that's what made his run so special. And it's funny because Ken Barkley and I do this bonus green and growing every week, kind of like the gambling aspect of the NBA and sports and so forth. We've been doing the NCAA tournament last week. We'll probably do some more of it this week, but we had talked about the MVP a couple weeks ago. And I was saying he's with You Better You Bet, BetQL Radio Network. But we were talking about MVP. And I said, dude, I'm struggling with Jokic winning 3 in a row when the dude's never even been to the finals yet. Like, we're going to look back 20 years from now, like that dude said, Guillory, and go, that dude won 3 MVPs in a row. His team never even made it to the damn finals. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, really, how good are we? And Ken Barkley's argument to all of that is pretty much advanced stats across the board. Like, if you look at all the advanced numbers and all the advanced stats, he's the MVP. Case closed. Let's move on. It's done. And that's what he's using. And I countered with, if voters had advanced stats back when Jordan played, would he have ever have lost? And he started laughing. He's like, I don't know. I don't know how that would have played. I don't know what the advanced stats would have shown for Jordan versus everybody else, or whatever the case may be. But it feels like a lot of these guys are using these advanced metrics now to determine who they're going to vote for.
So as you know, I'm a numbers guy. I mean, like, I
More
don't,
than me.
people make fun of the advanced stats and like all that. I do like that stuff. I do value that stuff. Now, I think it's such a hard thing because you don't know if you should change it or just like, should you change it and, actually kind of like, because again, I think most people are like, or not most people, but I think there's people on both sides of like, okay, you shouldn't be able to win 3 in a row until you do stuff in the playoffs. And there's people on the other side of like, no, if you have the best season, you should still win MVP like, it's not a playoff award, it's a regular season award. And so it's kind of the debate of, do you change it? But then the problem is it screws everything up, because if you start just giving it out and saying, no, it's strictly regular season, we're not like, there's no voter fatigue, none of that. Well, a guy like Jokic is going to maybe end up with more MVPs than Jordan. And at that point, you kind of almost just have to like devalue like MVPs in terms of legacy and all that, like, and just say it's not that important, because again, you can't, it's hard to like, do you kind of just want to, even if it's maybe not the best way to do it right now, of like adding in voter fatigue and not giving it to guys because they've won it before. But since that's happened to so many other guys, do you just keep doing that to stay consistent? And like, it's a debate. If you really wanted to say Jokic is having the best season, I'm not going to argue against that. Like, I think there's a clear argument that Jokic has had the best individual season. But since Giannis had to go through the stuff of, and LeBron and Jordan, all these guys have had to go through the stuff of, well, you might still be the best, having the best season, we got to give it to someone else. You wanted that to happen to Jokic too, because otherwise it doesn't seem fair. Now, in my opinion, I just think they should always have, like, they should have an award for best individual season and best player in the world. And you could maybe be both. Like, if Giannis truly has the best in like season by all metrics, and people, players, coaches, whatever, vote him best player in the world, okay, he gets both awards. But like, I like, to me right now, there should be something that indicates that Giannis is regarded as the best player in the world. If you are talking about, oh, we want to look back in history and, have our fingerprint on like what things were like back then. Well, if Giannis wins MVP 2018 and 2019, and then, no MVP 2020, no MVP 2021, no MVP this year.
What if he doesn't win it again?
Yeah. Then are people like, again, does that make people say, oh, he didn't have this dominant run? And it's like, no, he did. He didn't win the MVP, but for 5 years, he was regarded as the best player. And like, that should be recognized. And again, guys can have, but like LeBron James should have a best player in the world title from 2010, basically 2009 until 2018. Like there should be something that signifies that dude dominated the league. Maybe didn't have the best individual season every time, but he was the dude. And like, I don't know. So I'm never gonna be mad at them giving MVP to the guy that was the best, but like there's just it's got to it's hard because there's inconsistencies and do you change it? And again, I feel like there needs to be two separate awards because the best player and the most valuable player doesn't always end up having the very best season. Whatever, I don't know. It's such a hard thing to
No
talk
doubt.
about.
All right, let's move on to topic 2. Also, just a reminder for those of you tuning into Green and Growing, you now can find these episodes on YouTube as well. They're on the Odyssey Sports page, AUDACY. You can just go look up Green and Growing on their page on YouTube, and you'll find them. The video portion of this posts a couple days after the audio portion posts to the podcast. Of course, Google, Spotify, Apple, and the Odyssey app to get Green and Growing. Okay, how would you grade Khris Middleton since his return from injury? This is a topic because if you follow Bucks Film Room on Twitter, and the dude that runs this account used to be on Bart Winkler and the Bart Winkler Show on the Fan back when we had local programming. And I thought he was pretty good on the radio too, talking about this stuff. And he brought this up yesterday after the Bucks lost. For those questioning, Siakam was 4 for 8 for 10 points with Middleton as a primary defender. OG was 4 for 5 for 8 points. Overall, the Raptors scored 25 points when Middleton was the primary defender in that game. Now, again, most of those were in the post. And I don't know if anybody ever regarded Middleton as a great post defender one way or the other, but that's kind of how we came up with this question. How would you grade Khris Middleton since his return from injury, not just defensively, but offensively too, just the whole package of like how he's played. So now he's finally had a stretch here where he's been playing somewhat consistently. What say you, Nathan Marzion?
I honestly think in terms of like what you could expect, coming off injury and like working his way back, I think he's been about as good as you could expect. I don't think anyone expected him to be some great defender coming back and like, even his past couple of years healthy, like you could see, okay, he's starting to get a little bit worse defensively. He's not, he's never been super athletic, never been super quick. And he's always just kind of been like, okay, he can at least not be a super big negative out there defensively. But like he's not some game-changing defender. And so I definitely didn't expect him to be fantastic defensively coming back, but like his offense has really been pretty good. I mean, he didn't shoot the ball well from 3 to start his first, like 10-ish games back, but I think he's 44% the last 8 games. And, the numbers he's putting up in, as few of minutes as he's playing, I think he leads the league in points per game for guys that average less than 25 minutes a game. Like he's of guys that aren't playing that much, he's scoring the most. It's,
That's a thing. You can search that and find that stat.
yeah.
That's pretty good. See, that's why Marzion, man, he's on top of it. You ain't gonna catch him with not knowing numbers. All right, very good. That's good. So Middleton leads the league in something. Good. All right, very good. See, we learned something on this
I'm just saying,
podcast.
like you can there's a stat. I mean,
Yeah.
just in terms of points, he is the best among guys that aren't major minutes guys right now. Like
Right.
for what he's doing in his minutes is very, very impressive. Like people might look at his stats and say, "Oh, he's only putting up 17 and 5." Well, and like yeah, that's okay, but that's nothing special. He's kind of he's only playing 24 minutes a game. Like that's really, really good in 24 minutes.
For sure.
If he played 32 minutes, 35 minutes as he's going to do in the playoffs, okay, those numbers become like 23 and 7, 25
Right.
and 7. Like that's a dang good game. So I've been really pleased with it. And his as I said, his 3-point shot has come back very, very well lately. And it looks like he's getting back into form there. And the 2-pointer he's been lethal on like the mid ranges and stuff. And even driving to the hoop, he's been pretty good finishing around the rim since he came back. I've been happy with him, and I'm hoping his defense can, step up a little bit in the playoffs, and I think it will. We've seen it before in the regular season where he's had, bad games defensively and maybe bad stretches. And again, as I said, he's a slower player. He's not athletic. He's not doesn't have great burst, any of that stuff. But he's always been someone that kind of just gets the job done, and that goes for offense too. Like That's why I never was super worried about him not being able to come back from this injury, because I'm like, if anyone can play injured, it's Khris Middleton. Like, he doesn't need to have if an injury takes away a little bit of your athleticism, a little bit of your pop, and like, he doesn't need that. He's just a guy that gets to his spots and like drains jumpers, and like that's kind of how he's always been. So I've been happy with him, and I hope his minutes can ramp up a little bit. He started to ramp them up. There's been a couple games I think he's played like 30 minutes, and had some big scoring games, and so ramp up the minutes a little bit in the playoffs. Defense gets a little bit better in the playoffs, and his offense looks pretty good. So I'm happy with it.
The other thing about Khris Middleton is end of game scenarios, right? That's where you're going to want Khris Middleton when you get into the playoffs, playing his 30 minutes or whatever it's going to be in the postseason. So for me, it's what will his legs look like when we're in the last closing seconds of a 4-quarter game and he's already played 30 some minutes? What will his legs look like when we're in overtime in a playoff game? Will he still have the legs to hit that shot once we get to the postseason? Because while I get slow playing this, and I'm all for not really wanting to play in back-to-backs that much and kind of avoiding that and being as cautious as possible, you do have to kind of start to ramp up stamina here once we get into April with a couple of weeks to go, going into the playoffs, and try and get that stamina up a little bit more than where he's at. I would assume that Coach Budenholzer will do that once we get to April. But I think that has to be something you start looking at here. You can't, I don't think, at least maybe I'm wrong. I don't think you can go 24, 25 minutes and then get to the playoffs and go, okay, dude, you're going to play 35 now. And every night we're going to play 35 every other game or every other day or however this matches up in the postseason. That might be asking a lot because we're expecting them to make a run, not to be eliminated in the first round. So he's going to go through several series playing at a high minute limit, and he really hasn't had any stretch to this point of seeing how his body reacts to it and getting that endurance level up, Nathan.
Well, here we go. Numbers for you.
I like numbers.
Last 6 games, how many minutes per game you think he's playing?
I think he's averaging more than 24. I would say he's closer to 30, so like 29 maybe, somewhere in that area.
32 minutes a game last 6 games.
That's good.
Averaging 20.7 assists, 47% from 3. Like, he's back.
He's right where he should be then. That's right where you want him to be, is around 32 minutes.
Yeah, and again, this isn't something that I think, and some of it is they've taken him out in a couple late games, like late in games and stuff, and I think that has affected people's opinion on it. Like, they still think that he's not being ramped up, and it's like, no, he is. I'm just gonna quickly get these numbers here. Like, the first 6 games back, he averaged 17 minutes, and then he had a stretch right after that where he was averaging 23 minutes. And then since then, he's at the 32. Like, they are ramping him up actually really well. And again, his numbers, like, as he's getting ramped up, are improving. Like, he's had some big games lately. I mean, and as I said, average like in 32 minutes a game, which is less than he'll play in the playoffs. He's right now in the last 6 games averaging 20.7 assists, good shooting, few turnovers.
See, that's the thing though, right? So we talked about this, was it last week before, as far as how many minutes. Somebody asked us on Twitter, how many minutes do you think each player will get in a playoff rotation or whatever? I think I'm okay. If Middleton's playing 32, 33 minutes, I think that's okay with me. I think you have enough guys depth-wise that you can afford to play him 32 or 33 minutes and still be fine at the end of the day, Nathan.
Yeah, and again, this is the beauty of having as deep a team as we do have with this type of situation, is if you do, like, in the first and second round still want to be like, hey, let's limit, like, let's not take him too far over that like 30, low 30s mark. We should win this series. We don't want to push him too much. Like, it shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be something that, oh, we need him out there, we're struggling, we don't have guys. Like, no, we're gonna have plenty of guys. We're gonna be able to give him rest when we need to. Maybe there's gonna be games where we're blowing someone out, or even, maybe there's a game we get blown out and it's like we can give him rest then. And it's just like, I don't know. And just with how he's looked the last, couple weeks, playing, basically over 30 minutes a game every night, I'm getting much, much more comfortable with it. And I mean, this is, again, you ask like how grading him since his return. It's like, we were talking about a couple months ago, like he came back about 2 months ago, almost to the date. We were talking about like, is he even going to be ramped up at all? Is this going to be like, we have to go from basically nothing to
right
then playing a ton? Like, what better could you ask for him to go from 17 minutes a game for a little bit to 23 minutes a game for a little bit to now over 30, and he's putting up really good numbers. Like, okay, his defense is was a little bit iffy for a couple games. I'm not going to be like, oh, this sucks. Like, he's been as good as you could pretty much ask for. And if we can have even I kept saying, if we can have even a 80%, 90% Khris Middleton, which it looks like we're getting right now, and this is still a month before the playoffs, if we can have even that, we should be fine with how much depth we have and how good Giannis is, how good Drew's been, how good Brooks been. Like, we should be okay.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. All right, let's go to topic number 3. Now, at this point of the podcast, we're going to sidetrack off of the Bucks just a little bit here. All right, topic number 3, reaction to comments made by Boston Celtics guard Jaylen Brown. By the way, Celtics struggling. If you follow any of these guys that cover the Celtics on Twitter and social media, you can see that they're starting to get, I think, a little bit concerned by how the Celtics are playing. But Jaylen Brown, on remaining in Boston long-term, this is via Logan Murdoch, I guess, quote, I don't know. As long as I'm needed, it's not up to me. We'll see how they feel about me over time, and I feel about them over time. Hopefully, whatever it is, it makes sense, but I will stay where I'm wanted. I will stay where I'm needed and treated correct. I just enjoy the time that you have now. If it's your whole career, it's your whole career. If it's not, it's not. Some of the greatest players of all time haven't finished with their organization. Michael Jordan retired a Wizard. End quote, Jaylen Brown. I will tell you, Jaylen Brown was none too happy about those Kevin Durant trade rumors possibly in the Celtics. And Jaylen Brown brought up the fact that KD and Tatum are friends and they work out together. And he called Celtics management like, what the hell is going on? Like, are you going to trade me to get KD? Like, am I in trade talks? And I think that's where the whole, the idea of I'm not appreciated, maybe they don't like me, maybe, they want to upgrade me for somebody else to play with Jason Tatum. Or if they don't appreciate me, when I have the opportunity to go somewhere that does, with somebody that does appreciate me, I'm up and out of here. I see how this is. And to be honest, you can say, well, that's weak. Like, he's a professional. He should expect to be, put into trade talks, and that it shouldn't take it personal. And that's kind of the management side of what maybe they would say about Jaylen Brown. But I can tell you right now, and you brought it up earlier, he's playing well. So from that aspect, he's going to cash out. Like, there's no question. If he gets to free agency, when he gets to free agency, he is going to cash out. And that is going to put the Celtics in a rather interesting position, having to try and fill that and find a new wing guy for Jason Tatum, who is definitely their core guy that they want to go with for the next several years, obviously. As a Bucks fan, fine with me. See ya. I hope you go somewhere out west. Hope you find a nice, comfy spot and a nice team out in the Western Conference and go try and build a mega team out there and leave Jason Tatum on an island out here in the East. Totally fine with that. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Boston and the way fans treat people or the players in the NBA and all these stories you hear about stuff they're yelling at players. And I wonder how much of that is maybe irritating and getting on Jaylen Brown's nerves as well. Because look, yeah, they're yelling at opposing players, whatever they're yelling, but you hear it. You're on the floor when they're yelling at the opposing players, whatever they're yelling. Maybe Jaylen Brown's turned off by that. Maybe he doesn't want to be associated with that crap anymore. Maybe that's part of the reason why he wants out. I don't know, but to me, if I'm Brad Stevens, there is going to be a big decision to be made. Are you going to tie yourself to Jaylen Brown going forward long term? Do you think these two guys are capable of getting it done? I said before when those Durant rumors were flying that it made sense to me that I don't think they can win what they want to win with those two as their lead dogs. I think they needed somebody better than Jaylen Brown. And I think Brad Stevens thinks the same thing. And I think Jaylen Brown ends up somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, as a Bucks fan, you like this stuff. You like when there's drama with other teams, other contenders and stuff. I do definitely think it's just a case of, he's a guy that thinks probably he's just as good as Jason Tatum, and the team clearly has always kind of prioritized Tatum and, who do we try to get alongside him? And it's like, I'm not saying Jaylen Brown thinks he's way better, like he should be the guy, but it's like, you want to get the same respect that Tatum gets. Like, Tatum isn't in these trade rumors. Tatum isn't considered in this stuff. Like, and I mean, last 12 games, I just pulled up the numbers. Last 12 games, Jaylen Brown, 28 points on 50% from the field and 39% from three. Jason Tatum, 27 points on 42% from the field and 29% from three. Like, he's playing better than Jason Tatum for the last month. And, you're just feeling like you're always in his shadow. And it's like, he's averaging 27 for the season. And he's considered a sidekick. And it's just like, I can understand where he's coming from of, and I'm not saying they'd be better with Jaylen Brown as their number one or anything, but it's like, you have pride as a player, and when you're not treated that way, you're not treated the way that, and in some ways, not that, I mean, this, just going to connect this to the Bucks for a second. In some ways, it's almost a blessing in disguise that Khris hasn't been better than he has been, because if he did, and I mean, Khris is like not an ego person, but like if Khris did have a season averaging 26, does he start to get like, oh, I need to be respected like Giannis? Whereas I feel like he's always been like a, steady 20, 22 point per game guy, and he knows what his role is. He knows he's a number two. He accepts that. He embraces it. Like, that's almost better than having like two guys that are like 27, 28 a game, and neither one of them is really good enough to be a number one on the championship team, but they both think they're the number one. They both think that they deserve the same respect. Like, I don't know. It's a weird situation. And I don't know. I like to call them Robin and Robin. Like, neither one of them's a Batman.
It'll be interesting to see if Jaylen Brown goes free agency, right? Who's going to line up and where would he want to go play? Because let me just throw something out there, folks. Just hear me out for a second. If Wembanyama gets drafted to the Spurs, they don't have any real big contracts. And they got a couple nice young players in San Antonio right now. And that might be an opportunity for Jaylen Brown to go play for a guy that won a championship in Popovich, that knows how to develop a big like he did in Duncan. Now, this is completely different with Wembanyama because he's far more talented than Duncan. But to be able to put those pieces around Jaylen Brown, you're the guy. You and Wembanyama, you're the guys. Here you go. We're going to give you max money, whatever the case may be. Billboards up all over San Antonio of you and Wembanyama together. And here we go. Maybe he looks at that and goes, I don't trust you. No, Wembanyama is going to get all the love. I don't think I really want to be a part of that deal and be in that situation. So maybe that turns him off. Maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe it's the Pistons. I don't know what their salary cap situation looks like, but maybe it's the Pistons. They've got some young guys. Maybe the Pistons are a team where he can definitely go be that guy. Because if he's like James Harden, I'll give you one, but he's not going to be the guy, would be Philly. If James Harden picks up and goes to Houston, like everybody is rumbling about, that he wants to go back home where his family is and play in Houston with all these young guys, that would open up a spot for Jaylen Brown to go play with Embiid in Philly and have a chance to play Boston and be a problem for Boston. That might be a situation, Nathan, where maybe Harden or where Jaylen Brown ends up. I mean, off the top of my head, I don't know where the best fit is necessarily and where he can be the guy. But if he wants to be the guy, is he good enough to win a championship? If he's number one on a team, is that team good enough to win a championship? I don't know. I mean, you just read off his numbers. Those numbers say superstar.
Those numbers, in today's game, those are like second-tier superstar numbers. Like 27 a game, 28.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, but again, this is 2023 where there's 7 players averaging over 30 points a game, guys averaging like 33. It's really good, but I don't know. That's
7 guys, right? So, okay, hold on. Call those numbers back up again. The scoring numbers quick. So how many guys are in front of him? Where does he rank in scoring in the NBA right now? For the season, yes. Where does Jaylen Brown rank for the season in scoring? I'm just kind of curious. 15th? Okay, so that's what, 50? That's half. That's better than half the league's other number ones. And there's probably number twos on that list outside of that, right? So it's like Harden on that list with Embiid. Are they both on there in the top 15?
Harden's Phoenix has, well, I mean, he's not a number 2. He is a number 2 technically, but Booker is averaging 28. Kevin Durant's averaging 29, but none of those have come really with
your
Phoenix.
mic chopped out on Philly. Where was Harden and Embiid? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, Harden doesn't average that many, but the only number 2 right now that averages more is Booker. Is now technically, he's now a number 2, so he's averaging 28. But
and
those
also, numbers will probably change a little bit.
I was going to say, I was going to say they haven't played together, so I'm not sure how much stock to put into that. But all the rest of the other guys, I think above him are number 1s.
So he'd be a legitimate number 1 on a team that he went to. There's 15 teams that might have better true number 1 players.
Well, here's the thing.
He would be a legit number 1.
You can be a legit number 1, but the question was, can you win a title with him as your number 1?
Yep.
Like, Anthony Davis is putting up, 26. He's right behind Jaylen Brown. He's putting up 26 as a number 2. He's 17th in the league. And so you could say, yeah, Anthony Davis could be a team's number 1. Yes, like there's plenty of teams who could be the best team for, on the team. They're not going to win a title though. I mean, yeah, Drew Holiday, and he couldn't get anything done in the playoffs at all. So it's like, no.
Good point. All right, let's move on. Let's go to the last topic, one that may provide some emotion from Nathan Marzion. All right, so Badgers, Wisconsin. Badgers NIT, Marquette NCAA tournament. Marquette does what they're supposed to do. They beat Vermont. That was a big sigh of relief, I think, for every Marquette fan, because the ultimate nightmare in this deal would have been losing to Vermont after winning the Big East regular season title, winning the Big East tournament. To stub your toe and lose to Vermont would have been a complete disaster. So they avoid that easily. They were in control that whole game. Now they get Michigan State. I had stated Izzo concerned me. And Michigan State, who is a better three-point shooting team, one of the better three-point shooting teams in the country, with top 5 or whatever, were awful from 3. Awful. And then, of course, Hauser hits a big 3 towards the end, and Marquette ends up losing. And the Shaka Smart breathing thing in a timeout had me laughing out loud. I really did. I'm sorry. That was funny. But I'll give you credit, Shaka. I will give you credit. You looked at your young team and you said, dude, we're going to choke this bad boy away. I got to get these young boys to settle down as quickly as possible. And this is what we're going to try and do to get them to settle down. Because that's kind of what it is, man. I got kids, right? So anytime you get into a big moment and you're getting frustrated, what do I say? Take a deep breath and relax, right? If your kid is a pitcher in youth baseball or whatever and gives up a walk or 2 walks, you can see he's getting flustered. What do? You yell, hey, take a breath. Just take a breath and relax. And that's kind of what Shaka did with his team was just take a breath, settle down, and get back to doing what we do. So he saw it happening, tried to stop it, couldn't stop it. So they lose. Fine. Then you have the Badgers, who really weren't that very good all year. They're in the NIT. They've won a couple of games, do what Wisconsin is doing. They're better in the NIT, the Big Ten teams, than they are in the NCAA tournament at this point, because in the NCAA tournament, they were awful outside of Michigan State for the most part. But then on Twitter, you follow at Nathan Marzion, like most of you do, and you watch Marzion almost enjoying the hate coming from Badger fans and the y'all lost, you suck, blah, blah, blah. All of that. Marzion was kind of like basking in the glow, like, all right, the rivalry's firing up. I like this. Bring it on. Let's go. And he was loving it. You could just tell it. He's smiling on the video. You can watch it on YouTube in a couple of days. He's smiling and he was loving it. And I could tell he was loving it. I was like, all right, this is cool. He's embracing it. He's not getting mad and yelling at people. He's embracing it. He knows it's coming. And even Nathan Marzion even said in a tweet, paraphrasing, of course, that if Marquette would have been in the NIT, won a couple games, and Wisconsin would have lost a game in the NCAA tournament, you're damn right I would have been yelling, hey, at least we're still playing. Y'all are all home after one game. I thought that was big. I was like, man, this is pretty good stuff. But then there were people saying, dude, who cares? This isn't really a rivalry. Like, this is not that big of a deal. You're making this bigger than it actually is, dude. Just chill out. It's not that big of a deal. That irritated Nathan, I think, a little bit. So, Marzion, the question is, just how big is this rivalry not right now with Marquette and Wisconsin fans?
I'm not gonna act like it's some huge thing. It's a big thing. It's a big thing for me. Obviously, it always has been.
You went to Marquette.
Yes, and I've been a Marquette fan and a Badger hater since I was like 12, 13 years old. Like
Why?
Because
you have other family that went to Marquette?
My dad went to Marquette. So I always liked Marquette. I didn't have a huge problem with the Badgers until people don't get that. For Marquette fans, it's different. Like for passionate Marquette fans, it is so different. The experience you grew up with and the experience you have compared to people who kind of like both or don't really care or like Wisconsin. When you are a passionate Marquette fan, everyone around you cares more about the Badgers. Everyone. And it makes you say, screw that team. And so it's almost like, I mean, again, this is different. They're in the same division and, they're not same state, whatever. But like a Packers-Lions thing. Lions, Packers fans don't hate the Lions. We're not like, I have no ill will towards them. Care. But if a Lion fan hates the Packers, I understand that because we beat you a lot. And everyone, if you're a Lions fan, particularly like if you live in Wisconsin and you hate the Packers, wouldn't that make sense? You grew up, everyone likes the Packers, you like the Lions, your team isn't as good. You get, and then not that I'm sure Packers fans give you a little bit of crap for being bad. And so when people are like, well, we don't care about Marquette that much, and Marquette cares more. Well, I'm number one, you do care about Marquette because it shows every time Marquette loses, but whatever. Number two, we're gonna have different opinions when we have different experiences. Like, we grew up with everyone around us loving the Badgers, so we are going to hate them more than Wisconsin fans hate Marquette because you grew up probably knowing one or two Marquette fans. Why would you hate them? Like, and I will say, you said I was enjoying having the.
You're still smiling about it.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I have no problem with people giving me crap because that's how it should be. Like, that makes it fun. It makes it more intense. Is like, I want to get past this so that we don't get crap, and I want to, rub it in their face and all that. When we lost, if we had lost first round, it would have been much more devastating because it would almost ruin the season. Like, you'd remember it as the season we lost to a 15 and not the season we won the Big East tournament and won the biggest regular season. Like, we can still look at this season as such a positive.
For sure.
Losing to Tom Izzo in the tournament doesn't change that.
Yes.
I wasn't devastated by the loss in that sense. It was frustrating, and you have to go on and see all these, people in your mentions. But again, I don't have a problem with that because I talk crap. I have that coming. Like talk crap to me. What I love, my favorite part isn't that people are in my mentions, because that's always going to happen. And that can just be people like, even if you don't hate Marquette, you're just saying it because I hate the Badgers.
Right.
So you're going to, but the people that said stuff unprompted, the people that just tweeted about Marquette, Ben Brust, going into his office. I don't know if you saw it.
That was hilarious.
The
milkshake thing that he did, the video.
We have
that
freaking arrived.
Video was amazing.
We have arrived when we are in Badger fans' heads that much. And I'm not saying it as like, oh, rent free, blah, blah. Because I hate them too. Like, I think about them too.
But in fairness to Brust, he does work at the Marquette flagship. I mean,
yes, but I'm saying,
broadcast the game, so he can't get away from it.
No, I understand
everybody else.
Yeah, I get that. But the fact that, like, he's that happy that Marquette lost, and these other Badger accounts are like, throwing little jabs at Marquette and all that. This is exactly what I've wanted. And this is exactly, like, I don't want it to be some like, oh, in previous years, the Badgers are a much higher seed usually. And like, oh, Marquette lost. Well, who cares? Badgers are playing. I love that it's the opposite of what it usually is. Usually it's Marquette sitting at home, rooting on, like, please Badgers lose because we just don't want to deal with this. And it's the opposite now. It's the Badger fans sitting at home going, please Marquette lose so we don't have to listen to crap about it. And, unfortunately we did lose. We gave them their wish. But, like, we are so back. We are so back if we are getting talked about that much by Badger fans. And it's going to be much bigger and better. And, like, the rivalry is going to grow if Marquette stays really good next year and the year after that. And, like, if they remain a top, program, and I'm not saying, I do think they'll be better than the Badgers for a little bit here, but even if they're on the same level, in a comparable level, it will grow, like, because we now are relevant again. We now are a team that Badger fans will see more Marquette fans. Badger fans will hear from more Marquette fans.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Let me just interrupt. Because like you said, I didn't go to either school. I root for both. So I don't have anybody really in this fight. But I'll say this. I don't think you can say Marquette is back until you do it next year. You go to the tournament next year, then I think you can turn around and go, okay, 2 years in a row, here we are. This is more like the Tom Crean, Marquette teams where we're just going to be expected to kind of go every year and go. But if you come back next year and you miss the tournament, which I think there is no chance of happening. But if you come back next year and all of a sudden something happens and goes sideways and you don't make the tournament, then it's going to be a fart in the wind, as Ron Wolf would say after the Packers won their first Super Bowl. If you don't win a second one or don't get back to a second one, kind of like the Rodgers Super Bowl, a fart in the wind. That is kind of how I look at it. The one thing that irritated me about the negativity flowing about Marquette wasn't from, well, maybe it was from Badger fans, but they weren't coming at me. They were going at you. But when I saw national accounts like the ESPNs and those guys, right, talking about Shaka, and it's like, oh, Shaka goes home again early or whatever the hell they were saying, that irritated me. Not because I don't really care one way or the other about Shaka Smart. We've interviewed him once on the Big Show back in the day with me, Gary, and Leroy. My thing is, it's unfair to go at Shaka about this only because they were picked 9th in the damn conference. They're really young. They're all coming back, obviously next year. And to say, well, you were 2, you should have won. Yeah, you're 2. Yeah, you should have won. Absolutely. That was the seeding said they should have won. I agree. Some picked them to go to the Final Four. I wasn't one of them, but some picked them to go to the Final Four. If they come back next year and they get bounced in the round of 32 again with this same group of guys, then I think it's fair to go, okay, Shaka maybe is having some problems in the tournament here still, and that's got to be something brought up. Then I think it's fair to go back at Shaka. But if they come back next year and they make a run to the Elite Eight or something, then that whole Shaka narrative can just go out the window. I'm one that's a big critic of Rick Barnes at Tennessee. He blew more high seeds at Texas than anybody, and goes in and he got a big win. Got Tennessee to the Sweet 16. I had him losing. Matt Painter at Purdue, holy crap. Like, I don't even know what I would be doing right now if I was a Boilermaker fan. Because, yes, you win every year, and yes, you're there every year, but you keep losing to double-digit seeds. You can't even get out of round 1. They're not going to fire that dude. But that is a problem. That is a big problem, and I don't think Shaka is that.
Yeah, again, if you told a Marquette fan going into the season, and I know expectations change when you're a 2 seed, but at the same time, when you're talking about making fun of the coach and stuff, like, if you would have told a Marquette fan that we're going to win the Big East regular season, we're going to win the Big East tournament, we're going to get out of the first round, which we haven't done in 10 years, and Shaka is going to get made fun of on an ESPN post for that, or like get criticized, like, you'd be like, what? Like, that's the best season we've had in, he literally turned the program around. Like, this year, he literally turned the program around. National, like, we were 6th in the country.
You'll be a preseason top 5.
We will be preseason top 5 next year. And it's like, and the fact that it's not some embarrassing loss. If you had lost to Vermont first round, okay, talk about it. Oof. But losing to Tom Izzo in a close, grinded out game, there's not some like, oh, Shaka sucks in the tournament. And the thing I hate is when people, even when he came to Marquette, people right away brought that up. Oh, he hasn't won a tournament game since 2013 or whatever. Before coming to Marquette, like, it's actually crazy looking at when you dive into it, just how, it can go one way or the other. His last 5 tournament losses before coming to Marquette by 2 points, which went to overtime, 3 points in overtime, 3 points on a half-court buzzer beater, 4 points in overtime, and then 1 point.
That was a tweet. You tweeted that out.
Yes.
Yep.
All 5 of those games easily. And this isn't coaching. Like, I get, people, oh, well, the coach should win close games. But the sign of like a bad coach or like not being prepared is you either get blown out or, like something like that, and you're not making adjustments and you just aren't even really in the game. But to lose to and half of these were to some good teams. I know the one was to Abilene Christian. That was a bad loss, whatever. But like, even that game, it's like they had a lead with 10 seconds left and then they lost on free throws. Like, and so it's just like, he's been in all these games. They could have easily gone the other way. And it's just like, with Wojo, we were getting blown out in the first round every year. And you could tell, like, this team's just not prepared. Like, they don't make adjustments. They don't, change anything. They're not ready going in. And with Shaka, like, they did get blown out last year. That was to UNC. UNC ended up making the championship. Like, they were just a lot better than us. But this loss to Michigan State is like, there was no like, oh, Shaka sucked in this game. It was the players really did not play well. They were just uncharacteristic turnovers. Tyler Kolek had the worst game he's had all season. And it's like, there was like not a single Marquette fan that I know that blamed anything on Shaka or like, we didn't adjust to anything. Like, our defense kept us in it. Like, we hung in that game despite being super young, despite having so many turnovers and our top ranked, one of the top ranked offenses in the nation just being terrible. We still hung in that game. And it's like, the narrative on Shaka is so overblown when you actually look at, and then again, his 2 losses since coming to Marquette are to UNC, who made the championship, and to Tom Izzo. Like, those are not bad losses.
No, not at all. And the other thing is, business is about to pick up in the Big East in the next couple of years. With Cooley going to Georgetown, Georgetown's going to be on the up again. And with Pitino going to St. John's, I don't give a damn if he's 71 or not. That program's about to get turned around in a big way. So Big East is about to get tougher. And then Providence, they're going to go get somebody. I don't know if it'll be the Penn State coach or who they go get, but they're going to get somebody. to go to Providence. I know Providence fans want Billy Donovan, but I can't see Billy Donovan leaving the Bulls to go coach at Providence. I can't see that happening. Nathan Marzion, always fun. Twitter poll question coming up on Thursday. It's been a while. Marzion's had off a couple Thursdays, so we'll see what fresh new poll question he has coming for you. Follow him at Nathan Marzion on Twitter, and that'll be out Thursday morning. You can vote, and we'll talk about it on Thursday night. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Don't forget, YouTube now on the Odyssey page, Odyssey Sports page, AUDACY. You can watch Green and Growing podcasts moving forward. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one. Toodles.